Yeah, I just learned this morning that the church started supporting the Vanning family maybe about 8 years ago. So they came, visited, I think, 8 years ago. And I think they had 3 children then. But the connection is with J.D. Crowley, who we had here a few years ago. So it's pretty interesting. And so wonderful to have Jared and Nozomi here with their family. And he's involved in church planting. And so really exciting. That's what our missions, what we do for missions and support those that are involved in evangelism and church planting. That's what we want to do. So I'm going to turn it over to Jared, and he's going to take the Sunday class time, and then, hey, if he might have some question and answers, so please feel free to ask him questions, and then he'll be preaching during the service and sharing a little bit more about the ministry for those that aren't here during the Sunday class, okay? So let me pray, and then let's get started. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for allowing us the privilege to have the Vanning family with us. What a joy it is to have them in person. I know that we've been praying for them, and those are other missionaries in our missions prayer booklet. So we just thank you so much that they're here with us, and all the things with immigration, that it was all squared away, Lord. And thank you for opening that door for them to be here. May you bless Jared and his family, and bless Jared as he teaches and he shares and ministers to us today. In Jesus' name, amen. All right.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Is the mic on? All right, good. Well, I'm going to just share, let's see. Once it comes up. Okay, we're good. So I thought I would share a little bit about, I'll ask the same question and we'll talk about different areas of Japan. So we got lots of Japanese people here. You might know some of these things, but this is more just to let people know like what the culture is that we're ministering to, and a little bit about the people that we're ministering to, a little bit about the need. And then at the end, maybe we'll talk about our family, a little bit about my kids, and have some question answer time depending on how much time we have, okay? So that's kind of my plan. So just to share a little bit about transportation in Japan, it's totally different than anywhere that I've seen in the United States. So one of the most popular things that we use for transportation is trains. So we have something, the word in Japanese is densha. And trains in Japan are always on time. Like, you can set your watch by the second. It's always perfectly on time, unless there's a typhoon or an earthquake or an accident somewhere, or something on the tracks, then it's late, but almost always on time, and usually safe. And the difference between trains in Japan and most other countries that I've ever heard of is that in Japan, the trains are really quiet, like this. And you know when the foreigners get on, because they talk really loud, and they're in a loud conversation, and all the Japanese people are like, staring at them like, you're supposed to be quiet. And so nobody talks on the phones. They actually have signs, don't talk on your phone on the train. So that's just a thing about trains. Let's see. I'm not able to switch to the next. There we go. Yeah, just some more pictures. Trains get crowded in Japan, especially during rush hour. This is a picture that a friend of mine took from outside of a train as it was going by, and you can just see the crowd of people there. And we've been on trains where we've been so jammed up you can hardly get in the train, or we're in the train. I take Kensei to I school, and on the way back it's rush hour every time, and it's so crowded at one point that they have the workers, they always come out and they just like jam the people in so the doors can shut, so the train can be on time, and it goes off, and it's just like this on the train. It's a little bit scary if you don't like the crowds. This is one I took a few years ago. And we also have bullet trains, which are not as crowded. They're more expensive, but they're super fast. So a bullet train can get you a normal drive that might take 7 or 8 hours. A bullet train can get you to the same place in maybe 2 hours. They're very fast, and they're on different lines, and you have to buy a ticket like an airplane. And it's cheaper than an airplane usually, but you buy your own seat just like an airplane, and you can travel greater distances across Japan. Even in one day, you could just travel over there and come back the next day. So it does help with ministry or speaking situations that you might have, especially as a pastor or things like that. So just some pictures of trains. That is a special edition train, by the way, Hello Kitty. But there's also cars. My brother took this picture when he came to visit us. There was a Lamborghini with Winnie the Pooh on the front. So he took this picture, but that's another way we get around in Japan, by cars and trucks and buses. But this is a picture. You can see Mount Fuji in the back, and there's a truck driving through some rice paddies. This is our car, which is called a Toyota Noah. Nice Bible name. And that's Shion when he was only a baby. Nozomi getting in the car. And the bikes also is another way, especially kids, but a lot of moms ride bikes all over the place, get their groceries on bikes. And so this is my girls with a couple friends. We went out one day, and I don't even think we rode those bikes. Those are rental bikes, and they were just sitting on them. And then, of course, walking. People get around by walking. A lot of places. We walk a lot further and a lot more steps than we ever have while we're in the States or even in Hawaii. You drive a lot more, I think. But here, we walk a lot of places. 20 minutes, 30-minute walk. Okay, we can do it. And we just walk. So this is a busy intersection. This might be the Shibuya intersection, but not on the busy time. About 3,000 people can cross this intersection at one time crossing. That's how busy it gets. And that's also how crowded we are in our area of Tokyo. We're on the east side of Tokyo, and it's the city called Chiba is where we're planting a church. So what I like to ask at the end of each section is, what does a missionary do? As far as transportation, what does a missionary do? Anybody have an idea? It's question answer time. Since it's Sunday school, we can go back and forth a little bit, right? Keep us awake if the coffee hasn't kicked in yet, right? So what does a missionary do? Anybody have an idea for missions? What do you do? Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, as far as transportation, sorry, like with that in mind, what does a missionary do? We walk. Yeah, we do walk a lot. Yeah. But specific to missions, what do you think a missionary would do? We usually travel from one place to another, right? To a place, maybe we travel from one place to another place where maybe the gospel hasn't been heard as often, right? So we know the Japanese people, I'll share later during the service time, but the Japanese people are the second largest unreached people group in the world. A lot of people don't know that. We think unreached people group when we think of like mud huts, and we think of people out in the bush where missionaries literally can't get to them because you got to climb mountains and stuff to get to them. But Japan, everybody goes there on vacation. They got robots, and they got computers, and they got bullet trains, but yet they're the second largest unreached people group in the world. And a lot of people, it just doesn't even faze them. They go through Tokyo to get to another mission field, but they don't think about Japan as a mission field. And so what does a missionary do? We hear about the need, and we say, well, let's go. Let's bring the gospel to them too. And then I want to connect this to Jesus as well, because Jesus was the first missionary, right? Jesus traveled from heaven, and he came to earth because there was a need, right? What was the need? We all were lost in our sin with no hope. And Jesus came to bring us hope, to live the perfect life we couldn't live, right? And then to die the death that we all deserve because of our sin. And then he rose again, and that's what we celebrate around this time, right? This is good. This is the Palm Sunday, right before Easter. And so this is what we're celebrating around this time, right? And we'll get more into that later during the service. So also food. Everybody loves food, right? I hope there's some sort of food that you love. The staple of Japan is rice. Most of you guys know that. I'm sure. We love rice. We eat rice as snacks. These are senbei. I got a picture of a guy making them on the grill there. They were tasty. Nozomi and I were able to go and get some unagi, eel, for Valentine's Day in February last month. And so this is just us eating. So that was the place setting. We got some white eel and some eel with the Japanese sauce and different stuff there. We eat fish a lot too. I think this is saba, if I can see with the glare. That's usually how it looks. They just give it to you whole, and you pick the meat off with your hashis, with your chopsticks. Here's sushi. We love sushi. We just went to sushi before we came to Hawaii with some visitors that came to visit us. Kaiten sushi, conveyor belt sushi. It doesn't look like this anymore because of COVID. Now they come covered with like a cover that I couldn't figure out how to open up until halfway through our meal. And so you can do special orders now too. And this is a bowl of the sashimi on top of a bowl of rice. At the fish market we were able to pick up. This is just some fish at the local grocery store, grilled fish. So we love fish. My kids' favorite restaurant though is McDonald's. So here I took the kids to McDonald's when Nozomi was at a meeting. I'll talk more about that too later. But yeah, the kids, if you ask my kids where you want to eat, it's always McDonald's. And I try to dissuade them from that when we're in the States because it's not as good quality as it is in the US. So there's better options when we're in Hawaii than McDonald's. We can go to some other places, but that's their favorite. We love ramen. I think in Hawaii you call it saimen, right? Saimen? I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it's very similar. So there's two types in our area. On the right side is friends of ours who are Christian. They have a ramen shop. That's pork ramen, pork broth. And then on the left side is my favorite, miso ramen. And they even threw some butter on top to make it even more rich. But that's the type of ramen I like, with the real thick pork chashu on top. Hopefully I'm not making everybody hungry. It's not lunchtime yet. And this is some curry udon, one of my Japanese pastor friends' favorite dish. There's Taishi when he was little, and my Japanese pastor's friend, kids. And we like yakisoba. So Japanese love noodles too. So there's some yakisoba, and there's some people making yakisoba at a barbecue. And that's another thing Japanese people love. We love barbecue. That's one thing we want to use even more now that COVID's opened up a little bit. We want to start having more barbecues and inviting our neighbors so we can have good conversations about the gospel with them over some food. So here's one time we did before COVID hit. We were able to have a barbecue. This is an unsaved neighbor of ours, Keita, and his kids. Let me go look here. I think his wife and his son, and then that's my sister-in-law. But they came, that's the barbecue area in our courtyard of our building, and we just had a big barbecue. We were able to have some good conversations with them. So what does a missionary do as far as food, right? So in this topic, what do you think a missionary does? Like if you went to, I don't know, JD was here a little bit ago, I heard. So like if JD was going from Hawaii to Cambodia, what would he have to do concerning food as a missionary? What do you think? Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, you got to be open. You got to try new things. I don't have pictures of the weird stuff that my my Japanese father-in-law would like to test me. Is he going to be a good missionary? I'm going to give him natto and make sure he eats it. He'll stare at me as I eat it. Or we went to an unagi restaurant with him before he passed away, and he used to love to test me, and he ordered something called kimo. If you're Japanese, do you know what kimo is? The kimo of the unagi. Kimo is the guts. It was like guts on a stick, and they would grill it over fire. And my rule was never say no to my father-in-law. So when he gave me something, I would just eat it, and it wasn't that bad. I was nervous before I ate it because he told me what it was. But yeah, we are willing to eat. Why? Because we want an opportunity to share the gospel. And sometimes over food is the best way to make a good connection with someone else who doesn't know Christ. So they might like something I don't really like, but hey, I'm gonna eat it because this might give me a chance to share the gospel with them, to build a connection with them. And so that's what a missionary does as far as food. I want to share a little bit about the need in Japan too. We'll share a little more with stats and details later on. But I just wanted to show you, first of all, Japan has beautiful history. This is a castle in Gifu. If you has anybody studied Japanese history at all? This is a famous warlord named Oda Nobunaga. And this was one of his castles in Gifu, Gifu Castle. And this is a samurai's house. I think we took this somewhere near Miyazaki with Nozomi's uncle when we visited her family in Miyazaki. And this is a statue by the Emperor's Palace in Tokyo of another famous samurai. In a lot of Japanese castles, if you go to Japan, they have almost like little mini museums inside the castles, and they have suits of samurai armor. I thought this was interesting because he has like a dragon, and it reminded me of that one from Mulan, the Mushu guy. So I took a picture of it. I've seen samurai helmets with a giant cockroach on top. I guess that would scare, at least that would scare the women when he come through. Maybe some of the men too. These are some real ninja weapons. My kids think that's cool, so there's a ninja sword and some throwing stars and different things like that. And of course, Japan doesn't also have beautiful and interesting history, but they also have beautiful nature. And that's one thing we love about Japan. Mount Fuji, they say, is the most, photogenic mountain in the world. It kind of has that symmetry that's so beautiful. Everybody loves to go and take pictures. This is a long time ago. That's Emmy when she was a baby, when we visited Nozomi's family, before I had gray hairs and stuff. And this is some other mountains. We went snowboarding with some people, and this is just up in the mountains. So beautiful. And springtime is also beautiful. We have the cherry blossoms. Everywhere you look, there's cherry blossoms, and it's beautiful. People in Japan like to go out and have, of course, food again, like to have picnics and have a barbecue out under the cherry blossoms. They call it hanami, and they'll just have a little fellowship time there. This is just a view of the one city from Gifu Castle, I think, on the top of Gifu Castle. You can see just the houses just kind of scrunched together in the valleys of the mountains. But also there's a need. And so here, everywhere you go in Japan, and you see this a little bit in Hawaii too, so it's similar, but you'll see these little shrines to different deities, different gods that they'll worship in Buddhist religion or Shinto religion. And so here, just walking down a path in the woods, I saw these stones where people worship. And so I took a picture, shared. This was after the tsunami, people worshiping, praying, saying prayers. Just a big stone or a big tree, very animistic type of beliefs. This is actually a Japanese pastor friend of mine showing us when we visited. This is the biggest temple in Tokyo, Asakusa, where lots of people go when they're tourists. He was just showing us what the Japanese people do. There's water there, and they're supposed to wash themselves off, purify themselves before they worship. Or we as Christians believe Jesus purifies us, so we can worship anytime. I thought this was kind of sad. There was kids carrying this mikoshi. They believe a God lives inside that box. I think that's interesting because the people of Israel carried a box on their shoulders too, right? And they believed that the presence of God was kind of in that box as well. So some similarities I see sometimes in their culture and this, but they'll do this, they'll do parades with this. Even my kids' kindergarten, they'll make one in their classroom. And I think I remember one of my children, it was either Emmy or Mona, I don't remember which one of my daughters, after they were finished making it, and I picked them up at school, at kindergarten, they said, "Daddy, look, they made this." She's like, "They think a God lives in there." And like she said that kind of laughing. And I was like, "Yeah, well, our God's too big to live in that little box, right?" And she's like, "Yeah." And so that was kind of interesting, but even she recognized that there was something not right about that. This was after the tsunami, the famous tsunami a few years ago. I don't have any pictures. These were pictures actually that my cousin, who went to help with the relief as a paramedic, went up there. But people left offerings for the dead loved ones. People praying again for that situation. And this is a picture I took recently. This is from Skytree. And I like to take people, if you visit, and you call us and want us to meet up with you, I like to take people into Tokyo a lot. And when I take people into Tokyo who are visiting, one of the places I take them is a tower called Skytree. It's the tallest, strictly just tower for tourism in the world. There's a few other taller buildings in the world that they use for other purposes, like hotels or whatever, but this is the tallest, just strictly tower in the world. It's so tall that when you get, this is not even at the top, it's maybe the 2/3 of the way up. You can't go to the top. You can pay to go a little higher, but the view is not much different, so I never did pay extra. But this is the normal viewing point, in the evening when we went up. I went up with a visitor. And I like to tell people, especially in the evening, you can see this better. Every light represents souls. And in Tokyo, less than 1% of these souls know Christ. So think about that. 0.3% of the Japanese people, and this is included in Tokyo as well, claim to be evangelical Christian. So that's 3 in 1,000. So think of all the thousands of lights, just as far as you can see, all the way over to at the edge of the horizon. It's just lights. There's nothing else you see. It's just full of lights except where the river is. Just all lights. And every single light represents souls, right? People are turning on lights. Otherwise, it would be dark. So these are people, souls. And most of them are dying and going to hell. And this is why we are in Japan. This is why we reach, because the need is so great. This is a group of pastors. I went to a pastor's retreat with a group of church planters that we're connected with. My church planting coach right in the middle, you can see me. I have a palm tree shirt on, a t-shirt with white, and then right in the middle to my right is my church planting coach. His name's Gary Watanabe. He grew up, he's half Hawaiian, half Okinawan, and he grew up in Hawaii too, but just wanted to give him a call. He was in Hawaii just a couple weeks ago for his mother's funeral. But just pray for even all these guys. These are church planters and pastors who are either planting churches or helping encourage church planters to plant more churches. Because really the answer to the problem, we ask, what does a missionary do? We see a need like this, and we say, I'm willing to go. And we go. And the need in Japan, the answer isn't an instant answer. When you have such need, I can't reach 27 million people in the Tokyo area. I just can't do it by myself. But what I can do is plant churches and then train other people, other young men to plant churches themselves. And so, because the answer to a lost country is not just let's have an evangelistic meeting, because where are the people going to go, right? And Jesus told us to make disciples. And so our desire, if we want to make disciples, we need to plant churches. We need churches who can disciple the people. And so that's what we're doing. That's why we're in Japan. And I'll show you a little bit more of how that's working out for us and an update later during the worship time. How much? We got a little more time. So I'll talk a little bit about my family and then have maybe question and answer time for you guys. So these are my kids. We took this in the summer, so it's fairly accurate. So I'll just give you a short update. Hopefully I don't make any of my kids angry, but I'll just give you a short update on the kids. Taishi, I'll start oldest and youngest. How about that? Or should I start youngest to oldest? I'll start with Taishi. You guys, some of you, if you were here 8 years when we came, Taishi was here, and he was, what were you, maybe 5 or 6 at that time. So he was like this. Now he's a teenager. He's 14. He attends a Christian junior high school. On the other side of the city, he actually rides the train 45 minutes, plus walking and everything. It's about an hour trip from our doorstep to the doorstep of his school one way. And he does that every day for school. But one of the things he said when he went to school at first, because he went to public elementary school, and so when he started going to Christian school, he said, I really like my school. And we said, why do you like your school? And he said, because I have Christian friends now. Because even though we had the second largest elementary school in the whole city of Chiba, the sub-city inside the Tokyo metropolitan area, even though we had the second largest elementary school, we didn't know any other Christians in our whole elementary school. And so that was one of the things he says he really liked about having just having Christian friends. He didn't get to experience that before. Taishi likes to play piano. He likes music. He likes reading. He's more quiet, so if he doesn't say hello really loudly when you meet him, it's because he's a little bit more quiet. But he played tennis for a while. He still likes to play, so if any of you are good at tennis, you can invite him to play sometime. But Emmy is our oldest daughter. She's 11. She just finished 5th grade because spring break is when grades change in Japan. And when we return, she's going to be starting 6th grade. So she'll be in her last year of elementary school. Emmy has been learning ukulele, and she likes to play during our worship time, as well as Taishi sometimes with piano. And so let's see, Emmy has a couple good friends, but Emmy's the one who invites her friends to our worship times, and they come. So especially 2 of her friends have come to multiple worship times. Her best friend An, and then another friend of hers, a boy named Shinichiro, who have come frequently. And you might see their pictures. I think I might have blanked it out because in Japan they're all about privacy and stuff. They don't want me to show pictures, but yeah. So Emmy, she'll probably start the same Christian school then when she finishes elementary school. Kensei was in 3rd grade. He's going to start 4th grade, and you're 9. Kensei's 9, and so Kensei's the one you might have been praying for more so than the others, just because of his eye situation. Right now we take him to eye training on the other side of Tokyo. It's about an hour-and-a-half train ride. Or hour and so even just driving, depending on the way we go. And he's working on that. He got some new glasses while we were in South Carolina over the summer. And Kensei loves playing soccer, actually. He plays at a little soccer club on Fridays, and he really enjoys that, right? Recently, he's gotten a little more interested in baseball because we've been able to go to a couple baseball games. We have a pro baseball team that you can walk to the stadium from our house. And so we went a couple times. Somebody gave us some tickets, and he was able to go, and he really enjoys watching that too. Let's see. Next is Mona. Mona just finished kindergarten, and when we get back, she's going to start 1st grade. So we'll have 3 kids in elementary school when we get back. Mona is 6, and Mona likes anything that's a bright color. Flowers, butterflies, unicorns, princesses, right? So she likes anything that's sparkly and cute. What else? Mona has been a good help for her little brother. She's been a really good big sister, protecting, holding his hand as they go to kindergarten. I think that's one thing that Shion will miss, moving to Shion, who's 4, and Shion will be continuing kindergarten without his big sister. Shion loves throwing stuff. We've been having to yell at him for throwing stuff multiple times, and he actually has like dead-on targeting. It's kind of shocking, actually. We've yelled at him because he's thrown a rock and hit a bird from like 20 feet away. Like, what? How is his aim so good? But he's a lefty too, yeah. So we have to really keep an eye on him before he gets us in trouble. But he enjoys throwing stuff, especially when we turn our backs. And he's starting to make some friends in kindergarten. So hopefully that'll be good enough for when his sister's not there anymore. But that's just a little short update on our kids. Hopefully, after the service or in between, you guys can meet up and say hi, get to know us and the kids. It's hard, I think. It's hard being a missionary kid in a foreign country. We don't think about that as often. We see the missionaries. But it's hard to, especially for my older kids who remember, being in the USA. And they're in Japan. They can speak Japanese, but it's not really their home. They miss, the USA. And then you have the other kids who don't really remember the USA, and Japan's their home. And then when we come to the USA, they just kind of are like, when we're in the USA in the summer, the younger kids were saying, I just want to eat some rice. I just want to go get some sushi. They were saying I just want to eat natto. They were saying, I want to go home. I miss home. They would say, and the older kids are like, I could stay here forever. And so we're kind of have a split in our family even. But so pray for my kids. Pray for them as they grow. It's really hard. Also, growing up without Christian friends as church planters, that's a hard thing. We are praying for God to provide, hopefully, another family that can come work with us. Not just for my kids, but also for the health of the church, to have multiple leaders. Japanese people tend to venerate a leader, like the samurai type of thinking, and kind of he's like a higher tier than the others. So if there was plurality of our leadership, we feel like that would also be able to exemplify humility as we're working together, and show the Japanese people that we're just like everybody else. We're not super saints. We're humans. We struggle just like everybody else. It's just that our job is to teach the Bible, and our job is to help you be able to feel comfortable going out and sharing the gospel with your neighbors and your coworkers. And so thank you for praying for my family. The connection as Pastor Jason was saying, is J.D. Crowley. We come from the same sending church, Hampton Park Baptist Church. That I think that's the church where his wife Kim grew up, and so that's how we got to know Mililani Community Church, was through J.D. He introduced us to you guys. He said they're a wonderful church. You should get to know them, and sure enough, we were able to agree with him on that, and we're so thankful for you. Thankful for your support for us over the years. Thankful for, we have an anonymous donor who gives gifts to our children every year, and we're so thankful for that. The kids gave a name to the donor just so they have like a made-up name, and I'm like, who is that? I keep asking, who is that when they say it, because I keep forgetting that they gave the name to the anonymous donor. But yeah, we're so thankful for everything you do for us and everything you've done for us, and for all the prayers you prayed for us. We definitely need it in such a lost country. Doesn't look lost, but it's very lost. So thank you so much. Do we have time for question and answers? Just a little after? We finish at 9:30, right? So we got some time. Yeah, questions. Yes? That's a good question. So he asked your children who go to the Christian school, so Taishi right now, yes, he asked if it's a private school and what language do they teach in. Yes, it's a private school, it's a Christian school, mostly missionary kids or Christian family kids. It's a school on the other side of the city. There's a church, a Presbyterian church, and they have a Christian school. And so we send him there, and they teach in English. But they also teach Japanese class, but they'll teach mostly in English. And they're also on the U.S. Schedule, so it gets complicated because all the other kids change grades, and then Taishi isn't changing a grade this summer yet. He's waiting until the summer he waits. So he's still in 8th grade, but if he was in Japanese school, he would be finishing 8th grade and starting 9th grade. Yes, so it's in English, the classes. They have missionaries that come and teach at the school there. They get support and come and teach. Yes, go ahead. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, so for higher grade level, yeah, you can go, the school goes all the way really from elementary to graduate. But some of the students, the graduates, have gone to Japanese college in the country. Others have gone to colleges in the U.S., so they kind of have options. It depends. It's kind of a hybrid homeschool plus, so you can do stuff at home, but you also study there. So it's like Christian school plus homeschool. And so some of them keep up with the Japanese requirements, and they're able to go to Japanese college. And other ones focus, okay, I want to go to U.S. college, so they keep up with the U.S. requirements to go to U.S. colleges. But it seems to work. Yeah, those are great questions. Yes?
I got a two-part question.
2 parts, okay.
You know, I mean, you mentioned, I think, 2%, right?
Yes, 2%, yeah.
So, being on the ground in Japan, what do you think is the reason for the resistance of the gospel in Japan?
Yeah, that's a,
The other
yeah.
part is, what is the spiritual quality of the ones that you do
Okay, that's good.
do make a decision for Christ?
Wow, okay. I could go on for hours on this, this topic. Yeah, so let me rephrase the question, and I clarify, I might have misspoken. So Japanese is the second largest unreached people group in the world, but less than 1% is Christian. And actually the ones who claim to be evangelical Christian are 0.3%. So in that 1%, you would have Catholics and others that we might not consider evangelical Christians. And so that's where the difference lies. So yes, there is a great need. Why? That's a deep question, and that's the question where I think a lot of pastors and missionaries actually are working through. There's a lot of difference. I think for men especially, it's harder. So when you get to churches, there are churches in Japan, but they're small, maybe 20, 30 people. Anything bigger than that is considered a big church. And mostly women, more so than men. And it just seems like from my conversations with the men, I think, especially the men, but maybe even women, they tend to tie their identity in being Japanese also to Buddhist and Shinto. Maybe you see this. I see some Japanese-looking faces here, so there's some Japanese bloodlines, right? And so, like, I had a Japanese man say to me, well, I understand what you have to say, and it's great, but as a Japanese man, when I climb a mountain or go and do something at the beach and I see something beautiful and there's a shrine there, I worship. That's what I do as a Japanese man. I worship at the shrine when I'm climbing a mountain. He says, what you're asking me to do is to stop being a Japanese man. And he says, I don't know how I can stop being Japanese. That's who I am. So they tie their identity with the worship, the Buddhist and the Shinto worship. So it's hard for them to tear that apart because they feel like, well, I can't stop being Japanese. And my answer to that might be part of the second question. And he still hasn't trusted Christ, by the way, but this was just my answer. And he's a doctor. He's a very smart man. And he understood, but it's a faith step. Really, it's faith. And that's the key, I think. But my answer was, well, we as Christians, we're not telling you to stop being Japanese. Of course, you can't stop being who you are as a person, Japanese man. We're not telling you to stop being Japanese, but we're actually telling you to be more Japanese. And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, think about it. When you stop to worship, why are you worshiping there? Why do you worship Mount Fuji or something beautiful, like a beautiful giant tree or this rock that is formed in a beautiful way? Why do you worship this beauty and these things? Why do you feel like you need to worship? And the reason is because you sense that there's something greater. There's a God behind that, right? That you want to worship. Well, we're telling you not to worship the thing, the created thing. We're telling you that you should go past that and worship the one who created it. That's what we're trying to lead you to, is to worshiping him. And I was thinking of the Mars Hill, Paul's Mars Hill conversation is similar. And he's like, oh, okay, I see, okay, I get that now. But that's I think an important aspect that they need to understand is that as Christians, we are telling them they need to stop worshiping those things. Of course, we stop worshiping our ancestors. The only one worthy of our worship is God Almighty, who created all these things. And so we want to point them to God. And of course, the only way they can be reconciled to that God is through Christ. And so that's why we share the gospel. But we're directing them back to that God that they feel a sense, I need to worship. Well, I'll worship the tree or I'll worship the mountain. So does that help in the answer? So that's just one, and that is a huge multifaceted question. I'd love to talk to you more about that afterwards, though. That's a conversation that's fun to have. Any other questions? We have a few more minutes. Yes. Sure. Yeah. How God guided me to become a church planner and also to Japan. That's easy, like a semi-easy, semi-long. So my grandma's Japanese. I grew up with a Japanese grandma. Maybe similar stories you've heard during the Korean War. She met my grandpa. He was an Army staff sergeant, and they got married and moved to the U.S. But my U.S. wasn't Hawaii, which I'm really sad about. It was the U.S. they moved to was Pennsylvania. So I grew up outside of Philadelphia with a Japanese grandma, and always loved Japanese culture and Japanese things from my grandma, Japanese food. And so, yeah, well, when I was a freshman in college, I went to study art. I'll talk a little bit about this at the beginning of my sermon, but I went to study art in college, and I played soccer with one guy, and he shockingly passed away. Now, I'll give you a little more detail during the worship time. But that really shook me. That really woke me up to man, I'm just living my life for myself. The art just makes people like me, focuses people on me. I'm the creator, right, of the art. So people are looking at me, and I liked that. And so that was why I was doing art. And I wasn't living my life for God. I was living it for me. And that was when I realized I need to stop. I need to change. And so I changed my degree to Bible. A couple weeks later, we were studying in freshman history, and they told me Japanese people, less than 1% Christian, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. These are my grandma's people. These are kind of like my people. These are, in a way, this is part of my blood. they're dying and going to hell. Less than 1%. That I just couldn't stop thinking about it. God, why aren't there missionaries going there? I never hear about missionaries going to Japan. And so at some point then I was like, well, I guess I could go. And so I just kind of redirected that way too. And I changed my college, went to a college in Wisconsin and studied Bible. And just preparing, I wanted to go to Japan as a missionary. And it wasn't until after seminary, well, during seminary in South Carolina that I met my wife, Nozomi. I had been to Japan before and came back, and that's when we met, and we got married as well. So that's a little snippet of our story. Anybody else? We have about 10 minutes. Yes? Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah, we like classics. We like a little more newer music. I think the song I saw the guys practicing earlier, I love that song. Yeah, is he worthy? So we try to, since we're planting an international church, we have so many foreigners in our area, so we want to reach them and the Japanese. So we felt like it would be important. There's not really an international church in our area to help meet that need for the internationals, and we're an international couple, and so we felt like, well, it just makes sense. So we're planting an international church, so we try to have our songs bilingual so that part of the song is in English, part of the song is in Japanese, and so some people can sing from their heart language, at least part of the song. So we try to do that. So we partially translate. I know Nozomi's translated a few newer songs into Japanese to help, and then we just kind of make it work. But it just depends on the week. But sometimes it'll be more what would you say, classical, or like the old time hymns that we'll do in Japanese and English, and then it'll be other times it'll be newer. Or sometimes we'll just do a mixture of both. But yeah, we focus on being doctrinally sound more so than, the style. And our style is always the same because we only have a piano and a ukulele and a guitar. So, yeah, that's how we do it. Yes.
I know it's different with each person that you probably minister to, but if you were to ask someone to follow Christ, what kind of cost come into their mind as opposed
Yeah.
to, like, is it, disownment from family, or is
Yeah.
it like rejection from the coworkers or something like that?
Yeah, that's another question like over here, like a really good deep one. No, that's good. So it's a shame culture, Japan. We don't think of it that way, but it is. It's a community-minded shame culture, so it's very difficult. I think that's taking that first step of faith is very hard because they know. I have a pastor friend of mine. I'm friends with his son, but he when he took that step to become a Christian, he had to turn his back. He was the oldest son in the family. The oldest son, if you know the Japanese traditions, the oldest son gets the family butsudan, the idol closet. It's handed down from oldest son to oldest son. He was supposed to take that as the oldest son, and he refused it because he became a Christian, and he became an outcast in his family. I remember visiting those parents with my friend. They were his grandparents. We went up to where his family lived. If you know where Niigata is, we were up there. And I remember his grandma said to my friend, "How's my baka son?" If you're Japanese, you know that word. So how is my baka son? I'm like, why did she call your dad baka? And she's like, well, that's when he explained, well, my dad refused the butsudan, the shrine, and so they don't have the relationship. So she of course, the mother cares for her son still, but she doesn't show it to him. She asks the son of her son how her son is doing. And so that's kind of the essence. You don't always have that, but there's also pressure, I think, even for Christians to be quiet in the workplace. I think many Japanese people may have met a Christian, but there's a statistic where most Japanese people have never met a Christian, and that's true. But I like to say most Japanese people have never knowingly met a Christian, because I think most Japanese Christians are scared to stand out in the workplace. They just work hard and they stay quiet about their faith. They don't want to, there's a proverb in Japanese that nail that sticks out gets hammered down. And so they don't want to stick out and be different, so they just be quiet about their faith. And that's been a struggle I've heard from many pastors is like, how do I get my church people to actually want to share their faith with their neighbors and their coworkers and their family? Because they really are scared to share that because they don't want to be that nail that sticks out. So, yeah, excellent. Yes?
So, being in a population of 99% Shinto, Buddhist,
Yeah.
as you do your missionary work, do you participate in some of the rituals that, like Shinto or Buddhism, for example, like offering of incense and things where it's come up public? So, like you just mentioned,
Yeah.
you don't want to stand out like a nail in the
Yeah. So, yeah, like me personally? Okay. Like Japanese Christians? Yeah, so he asked, as a Christian in Japan, maybe even me personally, there's the rituals that they do in Buddhism and Shintoism. How do you handle that? Do you participate in them? How far do you go? Kind of question, I think. So, yeah, I don't. I stay away. I can. Most people know that I'm a pastor, a missionary, so they expect me to stay away anyway. But for Japanese Christians, it's harder. For family, I mean, what do you do when you go to a funeral for your dad who just died, and he wasn't a Christian, and it's a Buddhist funeral? And within that whole funeral, you love your father, and you want to honor him as your father, but there's a lot of these worship type of rituals. What do you do, right? So there's a lot of big questions like that that Japanese Christians have to face. And I think it's best to walk through them situation by situation. How do we give glory to God in this situation? But we don't want to, of course, only God deserves our worship. So we definitely don't want to be worshiping our dad now who passed away or other things. So there's a fine line. I personally, I had a group of 3 guys from the U.S. with us the last 2 weeks before we came to Hawaii. And they wanted to go into the shrines and the temples and take pictures and look. And I don't like, that's where they worship demons and idols. And I don't even enter. So I say, go ahead, guys, you can take pictures. I'll stay outside. I believe that's a conscience issue. Maybe JD spoke about conscience with you guys. He wrote the book. So, yeah, I feel like that's, in that area, it's more of a conscience issue. I just don't, I know they're not worshiping when they go in there. They're just touristy taking pictures, but I just keep a distance, and I don't like to go in. Or if at most, I might walk through the courtyard, but I don't really stop. And that's my personal view. I just want to stay away from places where they're worshiping demons and idols as best as I can. If you're walking down a trail and there's idols on the side of the trail, there's nothing you can do, but I just stay away from especially the big temples where people are, yeah. So that's my personal view. Anything else? Maybe time for one more question. We have 3 minutes, so any other questions? Yes? Okay. Yeah. Did you hear that, guys? So your friends who are Japanese, who might not be Christian, when they find out you're Christian and you're maybe talking about Christian stuff with them, what kind of do you get? Do they react a certain way to you when they find out you're a Christian instead of Buddhist or Shinto? How do they react? Do they react in any way? Yes? No? Oh, okay. Okay, well, Emmy's the one who has her friends come a lot, and her one friend, who she's best friends with, said when she shared, she just said, oh, I've heard of that before. I don't really trust that, because I'm trusting thing as a Japanese, but she said, I've heard of that. I've heard about that before, I don't know if that's positive or negative. In the news, it's not positive when they talk about Christianity. It's just the way it is. If you've heard about former President Abe, Prime Minister Abe, who was assassinated in the U.S., they said it was from that cult, like the Moonies cult, I think is the way they said it a lot of times in the new. But in Japan, they said it was a Christian church that did it. So a lot of people came up to us after that, especially Nozomi, her Japanese friends, like, wow, what do you guys think about that? You're Christians too. You know, why would you, why would a Christian do such a thing, and that gives us a good a gospel opportunity to share the difference between us and them, but it also causes confusion if the people who don't come and talk to us might just be thinking about it, and we don't have a chance to explain that they're not really Christian, they're not trusting Jesus, and they're not trusting the gospel, they're trusting other things. Okay. That's great. Those are all great questions. Thank you so much. These are better questions than I anticipated. Some of them really deep, that we could have like coffee or dinner over and not be done with the conversation afterwards. But I have conversations with pastors about, especially the question about why is it so hard in Japan? There's many different, I think, facets of it. But yes, I think our time's up. Maybe we'll have time for question and answer at the end of the worship time, or even you could just come up and talk, and we can talk about questions too.
We've got about half an hour to service starts, so feel free to meet the family and talk to them. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.